if you're joining us just now, the time is 21 GMT. Hamas has accepted a ceasefire proposal by mediators in both Egypt and Qatar. Let's cross over to our North America correspondent, John Brain, who joins us live from Washington, D.C. John, while we await for the US president to make a statement, which we believe he is going to do, let's talk about the US response today. Do they have any pressure to put on Israel?
They do, but at the moment they're just trying to ascertain what exactly is in this counter-proposal, whether it's just a tactic by Hamas to switch the pressure from being on them to switch that pressure to being on Israel.
Mohammed, you seem to be saying that Netanyahu seems to be very determined to carry out and to continue with this offensive in East Gaza. Now, we've spoken about the politics of Netanyahu and what motivates him. Is it peace or is it his own personal ambition to stay in power? But let's also talk about who can actually put pressure on Netanyahu to come to some sort of agreement, to reach some sort of ceasefire. Just earlier we were speaking to our colleague Frank Uciado in New York, who is saying that the UN Secretary General Guterres, he's also now come out with a statement saying, please, to both Hamas and Israel, come to some sort of agreement. So given that we're hearing so much from the US, from the UN, also from the UK, from various international actors, they're asking both sides to come to some sort of agreement. But who really can put that pressure on Netanyahu, given that even though there was an agreement, at least from Hamas, in place, he went ahead with his offensive in East Rafah?
Who knows who can convince Netanyahu to accept the deal? He has been dismissive of the U.S. We're talking about Israel's staunchest ally in the world, and he hasn't been giving in, or at least flexible enough to listen to some of the requests of the Biden administration.
I would say tonight, Prime Minister Netanyahu is the loser, whatever decision he makes.
So for you, he's a loser then, but do you feel as if that the Prime Minister Netanyahu is making decisions for himself, or is he making decisions for the future of his own people?
That's exactly the good question.
You can see the pictures there of those earlier pictures of those people in Rafah who were celebrating, who our correspondents tell us were even sharing sweets at this idea that there was a potential momentary ceasefire going to be put in place, that at least Hamas had agreed to this. Is there any hope then for the people of Gaza and for those people living in Rafah as these incursions into East Gaza by the Israeli military continue into the night? Is there any hope for anyone living there? Do you feel as if Hamas will ever want to give up their power, if that could be a term of any sort of peace agreement that could be reached to bring peace to this region? But also, on the other side, Ryan, you've got Netanyahu, who is also clinging to power. So you've got these two sides who are clinging to power at perhaps the detriment of their own people. Is that how you would see it?
I would certainly frame it as it is the expense of the interests of many of the people who they are supposed to be protecting on both sides. From the Israeli side, I do think it is important to note that the War Cabinet voted unanimously for that, and that includes people that don't get along with Netanyahu. So this is a story that goes deeper than that, in that even folks like Benny Gantz believed that this particular deal wasn't in Israel's interest. On Hamas's side, it still remains possible that under military pressure, because it looks like what Israel is doing right now is increasing that military pressure on Rafah, but keeping the door open to negotiations to continue, even if there's not a lot of optimism, that might allow for Hamas to kind of climb down from the situation in a way that assuages more of Israel's security needs. So this is the difficult part, because Hamas will have to accept something that will look like a surrender, at least in a functional sense, in order to end the Israeli military attack on Rafah.
Protesters have gathered in Tel Aviv to call on the government to accept the ceasefire proposal so that the remaining hostages in Gaza can, of course, then be freed. Demonstrators, as we have seen in live pictures and some pictures that you can see there, they've criticised the government for not seizing the opportunity to secure a ceasefire and protect Israeli lives. They also gathered outside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's home in West Jerusalem. More than 130 hostages are still in the enclave. Well, for more on those protests, let's go back to Mohammed Al-Qasem in occupied East Jerusalem. So, Mohammed, we're hearing that these protesters aren't giving up.
They're not giving up, and they're becoming more violent, Miriam. At least 3 Israelis been arrested in Tel Aviv at this time.
Okay, well, that is it from London. We'll say goodnight, but we'll leave you with some pictures now of these celebrations that you saw earlier on in the day from Rafah, where people were so excited, so happy. You can see them there raising their arms. Children smiling, big smiles at the news that Hamas had agreed to a proposal for a ceasefire that had been negotiated by the negotiators, the Qatari negotiators and Egyptian negotiators. Well, as we said, that's it from London. We thank you for being with us tonight for our rolling coverage. We'll now hand over to our colleagues in Istanbul and over to Jaffa Hisnen. Thanks for watching.